I think one area where many conservatives get lackadaisical is on the personal liberties issue. I like to look at the personal liberties and the economic liberties as being the same, and I think the founders did. They didn't have liberty over here for how you spend your money, but not on your personal habits. It's all one thing. But the problem with saying, you know, with the liberal, they say, well, oh no, if you don't have rules and regulations on redistribution of wealth, people are going to fall through the cracks, and there won't, you know, be enough to go around. So we got to make sure we take care of them. But the conservative comes along and says, yeah, but if they have total liberty, they might do some things that I don't approve of. Horrors, you know. But the rule is, it's your life. You can waste it or you can use it, but it's up to you to what you want to do with it, just as long as you don't hurt anybody else with what you do personally or what you do with your property, and then it's none of the government's business. Americans are pretty good on the First Amendment. You know, most people would agree, you know, the First Amendment there is for freedom of expression, and we have that pretty much. I can come up here and cautiously express my views, and we don't have to fear anything. But we don't have the First Amendment, and most people recognize this, we don't have the First Amendment so that we can talk about the weather. You know, we have the First Amendment to talk about controversial things and say express controversial ideas and criticize our leaders and all. Everybody knows that. And we know that it applies to our religion. You can have no religion or a lot of religion as long as you don't force it on other people. We're not to have a theocracy. And we know that we shouldn't meddle with our intellectual life. We know that the government shouldn't meddle with our religious life, and our religious life has to deal with something pretty important, like our eternity and our salvation, and we get to make our own choices what we do on that matter. But then when it comes to drinking raw milk, you have to have the government tell you whether or not you can drink raw milk. And whatnot, or what you smoke and drink and what the whole works. Anything that goes into a mouth is up for grabs at all levels of government. They think they can tell us. And I say no. And these habits, whether they're eating habits or smoking habits or whatever, these problems can be solved with private property rights, with, you know, like allowing restaurants to make their own rules, rather than coming in and closing people down and saying, oh, somebody lit a cigarette here the other day, you're closing us down, and, you know, all that. And I don't like, obviously, the cigarettes, and I don't like the drugs or anything. But I'll tell you what, as bad as I don't like those drugs, I really don't like the drug war. I think it's much more dangerous. A lot more people have died in the drug wars than they die from the drugs. Matter of fact, more people die from prescription drugs than they do from the illegal drugs. So they're not doing very much good by having the drugs legalized either. But we have a tremendous task ahead of us, and we don't have the same attitude that we had when they wanted to make alcohol illegal. You know, that's pretty good. They worked for 50, 60, 70 years to get the country to agree that alcohol was bad stuff, and I agree with them. Alcohol is bad. So they come along and they say, well, we're going to prohibit it because we're going to stop people from practicing these bad habits, and they have bad consequences. But what did they do? They amended the Constitution. Can you imagine anybody today suggesting we have to amend the Constitution to run the drug war? Drug war was started in the modern day drug war was started basically in the early 70s. And they have spent hundreds of billions of dollars on the drug war. We have more prisoners than anybody else in the world. And we have a lot of people who were put into these prisons. They were nonviolent, and they come out very violent. So I say that it's time we allow people to make their own choices and suffer their own consequences. If they make bad choices, they can't come crawling to the government. Freedom is something that we all believe in and understand and want to protect. Freedom was tested best in this country, better than any other country in the world. And yet, today, it's slipping away. It's an early experiment. Most of history has been run by tyrants. Most people in Washington are authoritarians either in one area. Some area, they're authoritarians, and they want to tell other people what to do, and they don't think their job is but one thing, and that is the protection of liberty. That is what we should be doing.